What's going on? What's going on? Welcome to the live stream. So let's take a couple seconds, wait for everybody to get in here. We'll have a conversation that most of our community, they're completely unaware of the events that I'm about to speak about, or maybe just this one event. I mean, but there's multiple events that I unfortunately can talk about for hours and days. But when it as pertains to our community and our awareness and knowledge of these events, most of our people have no idea that these things took place. So the purpose of these talks is never about trying to anger, rile up, or just get people upset and frustrated. This is a conversation about elevating, having an intelligent conversation about our history, and also about activating, because I know for a fact, as a medical practitioner, as someone who is a healthcare practitioner, I practice medicine over here in Florida. I know for a fact that us not knowing this history and us not being connected to it as we should is one of the main reasons why we are so comfortable with this healthcare system, is one of the main reasons why we are so complacent when it comes to self-care and taking care of ourselves. Is one of the main reasons why we need trust many of these recommendations, the advice, especially the foods. And so if we're able to bridge that gap between our lack of awareness, knowledge, and understanding to our current situation and our current conditions that we see right now in our communities, where you have a rampant increase in dialysis clinics popping up in our communities. They're in these plazas. These plazas and the dialysis clinics are surrounded by pawn shops, Chinese restaurants, liquor stores, gun store. It's very apparent what's going on. However, this all sounds crazy to the average Black person who doesn't know their history. This all sounds crazy, and it all sounds like a conspiracy. It all sounds extremely brand new because they are unaware of the true history. And so what we need to do is bring about the receipts, actually let them know that these things that are taking place right now aren't really new. They are, however, updated. So before I begin, make sure to please subscribe. And also, please, 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 it is our job. It's our community. It's our responsibility. Please share this video. Like this video. Go ahead and give it a thumbs up. Start sharing this video right now, because like I said, the reason why we are idle, the reason why we stand complacent, and the reason why we openly accept all of this advice and recommendations that is not showing us any progress is because we have no idea what has taken place in the past. We have no idea, and we have no connection to it. And so in order for us to really start this conversation and have it spread like wildfire, we need to do our part by sharing this information and get it out there. It's our job. It's our responsibility. It's our community. Let's go ahead and get into it. So I heard that they were making documentaries. You know, I'm not too familiar about everything that's going on because I tend to stay focused on the task that I have at hand. And right now, my task, my mission is radically improving the health conditions of our community. But I also heard chatter that there are documentaries being made about dead people, about crimes they may have committed. And that's cool. That's fine. So taking place, I figured I would help out America by throwing a couple names into that ring as well, too, because just in case they might have forgot, I want to help them out by giving them a couple names. And so one of the names we're going to be talking about is a doctor that is actually paraded as a hero. He's actually paraded as the father of modern gynecology. You may have heard of him. Maybe you never heard of him, but his name is J. Marion Sims, and we're going to talk about him. Also, we're going to talk about the name of this lecture, the name of this presentation, the name of this video is called Surviving Medical Apartheid, the story of Anarcha Westcott. So if you know anything about this story whatsoever, I want to let you all know right now. I told you all before, you know, if you haven't gotten this book, go ahead and get this book. It's not enough to be familiar with the book, because I hear that very often. People may say that I'm familiar with the book. I heard about the book, But if you look around our community right now and you see our health conditions, it's not enough to just be familiar with it, and it's not enough to just have heard of it before. We need to actually know this book. It's called Medical Apartheid by the sister Harriet Washington. And so the name of the book is called, well, the name of this presentation is called Surviving Medical Apartheid. If you know the story, you may say that those people did not survive medical apartheid. Well, they may not have survived, but their descendants, their nieces and nephews, their sons and daughters, cousins, those people survived, and the children of those people survived, and the children of those people survived. And you, us watching this video right now, if you are a child of the Africans that were enslaved in this country, your people were directly connected to many of the things that we're going to be talking about. You're not going to be connected. You're not going to be a descendant of any woman in this country that was enslaved, that was not affected by many of the things that we're going to be talking about. You are a descendant of those things if you are a descendant of Africans that were enslaved in this country. And it is that very part that we don't know that disconnects us from this history we're about to talk about. And once again, I strongly believe this is why we are not more active as it pertains to self-care. And so we are the survivors. And also, when we talk about these stories, when people talk about these stories, they talk about, you know, J. Marion Sims. They say his name over and over and over. J. Marion Sims. J. Marion Sims did this. J. Marion Sims did that. So he has his humanity intact, right? He has his humanity intact. They talk about how J. Marion Sims performed procedures and surgeries without any consent, without any anesthesia on slave women. Let's clean that up. Let's clean that up. Let's give our sisters back their humanity. These women had names, they have families, they had children, they had life, as much of a life they could have as an enslaved African woman in America. But we need to give them back their humanity. Now, we can't do it for all of them because this has happened thousands of times. And it would be impossible to know all of the names of all of these brothers and sisters, men and women who have been affected by this. However, we do know a couple of names. And then one name that we're about to talk about right now, and I want y'all to say her name. Her name is Anarcha Westcott. Anarcha Westcott. 17-year-old female is where her story begins as pertains to what we're going to talk about. So it's important for us to know this. It's important for us to know this. And, you know, I was speaking with a close friend the other day, and we were just talking about the overall health conditions of our community. And I was telling her that, you know, me finding out much of this information is what took me off of the football field. So for those who don't know, man, football was my life. Football was my life. I was the young man that went into the military. I thought, I mean, from the young age, I believed that I was supposed to be a football player. That was my goal. That was my dream. I'm supposed to be a football player. So much so, went to the military, did my time in the military. The whole time I'm training to be a football player. Got out the military. My goal was to go play college football. I didn't have not one credit ever. I never took a college class. I thought that I could just walk onto the team. Well, apparently you have to have a degree and you have to have credits and all those things, right? So I went to the University of South Florida. Told me I couldn't come on because I didn't have any credits. I had 0 credits. But because I wanted to play football so much, I set the record in Florida for achieving my associate's degree in the fastest amount of time. It was like 6 months, XYZ. The whole thing that was fueling me at that time was that I wanted to play football so bad. And so in 2008 and 2009, I played college football for the University of South Florida, which was #1 at the time. And football was fueling me to do those things. As I'm playing football, I got introduced to many people, but this book, I was introduced to this book. And when I read this book, I felt deeply connected with it. And this book was one of the things that activated me to change my direction. Football became such a childlike thing to me. And you're talking about somebody who was crazy obsessed with football. I gave my whole entire life to football. I made it onto the team, played 2 years. But when I found out about this information, this is one of the things. There were several things, but this is one of the things that made me shift my direction. And I knew I had to go do what I need to do, which is what I'm doing right now. And so, because most of our people are not connected to this information that we're going to talk about, it's easier to remain complacent. And like I said, I was talking to a friend, and she was telling me that, our people don't want to read about it or hear about it because it's too painful. And when she said that, I was like, yeah, it is painful. It is traumatic. And it does make you feel some type of way. And it makes you want to stay away from it. And I remember in my head, multiple people telling me, nah, I don't want to read that, man. It's going to make me mad. Nah, I don't want to hear about it. It's going to upset me. You should be upset. It should make you mad. But we need to make sure that we channel the anger in the right direction to be constructive versus marching, protesting. That's what are you going to do? Are you going to beg the hustler to not hustle you anymore? Let's see how that works out. I don't think it's going to work out too well. So for me, it was the information of sitting through and looking through these books and actually going deeper and deeper and deeper that activated me. I understood that I should not have my ass out there on the football field. If you out there, no knock to you, but I understood that with my ability to read and understand and break down things, also with my athletic skills, I would now transform that into actual intelligence and use that for my community as it pertains to our health. And so that's what happened. That's what led me to doing what I'm doing right now. And so it's important that our people connect themselves back to this history, because that is supposed to be your activator. History is supposed to be your activator. When you look at the Jewish community, what's their activator? The Holocaust, right? You start talking about the Holocaust, ain't too much you can do to stop them. Like, they're going to, no, we're going to do this because of what y'all did to us. Never forget. Why is it such a problem when we want to talk about our history? Why is it a problem when we bring about our history? Why is it a problem for you to even read about your history? How do you allow people to make you feel bad for talking about what they did to you? That's a trick bag. That is a trick bag. Your history is supposed to be your armor. Your history is supposed to be that battery pack in your back to make you go. You worrying about their complaints. You worrying about their little tears and all their little feelings. I can't hear none of that over the screams of Anarcha Westcott. Ain't nobody cared about her tears. They did what they did ruthlessly, and they didn't stop. So before I go ahead and get into it again, let me also make sure you take the time out right now to hit the like button, the share button, and also subscribe. And like I said, share this video. Share this video. What you scared for? Share the video. Share the video. You can't be afraid. I mean, come on, you can't be no more afraid than Anarcha was. And what I'm saying is we have to actually take action. We have to take action. All right. So what I'm going to do now, medical apartheid is where I'm getting most of my information. Like I said, get the book. Medical apartheid is where I'm getting most of my information. It's by Harriet Washington. She did a great job. However, because I would like to try to tell the story of Anarcha, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to read the blog of another doctor. Her name is Alexandria Lynch. Alexandria Lynch. She wrote a blog post about her, and the way she wrote it, it almost seems like a small documentary about Anarcha. We need to know that this sister had a life. She's not just a slave. She's not just an experiment. She was a sister. She had a life. She had a family. She almost had a kid. She was a human. Don't call her a slave. Don't call her an experiment. She was our sister. So what I'm going to do is read this story. All right. So, give me a little bit of time. Allow me to read this story, and then we're going to go into the discussion. All right. A pregnant woman stands blazing in the sun with her arms arched on her back, tired from working an 18-hour workday, picking cotton, looking after master's children, and cooking in the big house. These days are particularly hard for her, as it is for all women who must work until the moment they're about to give birth. So That was a common practice. Yeah, I know you're pregnant. Yeah, I know you could have the baby any day, but that cotton needs to be picked. My kids need to be looked after. There wasn't too much, there wasn't any care or compassion about those things. So once again, keep this in mind when people start complaining about you bringing up your history. Let's continue. Yes, she is worn, tired, and she can feel the aches grappling her bones. She is also filled with a glorious anticipation. Any day now, her sweet, beautiful baby will be born. As an enslaved woman, life is difficult to say the least, but there are still beautiful moments that this woman cannot deny. Even though enslaved, she can bring life into this world as naturally as any other woman. She returns to her cabin, covering herself the best that she can with tattered clothes and blankets. She has a conversation surrounding her thoughts and concerns about the arrival of her child with her fellow captives comrades. All of the women on the plantation are anxiously awaiting the birth of this new hope, and the father is also anxious. So the father is ready too. The father is looking forward as well. Both parents have mixed concerns about bringing a child into the life of slavery, but there's nothing they can do to change that. Later on that night, she feels the pain of labor contractions. She's hoping to give birth quickly because she knows that the birth of her child would not be an acceptable reason to miss work the following day. She wants to help him get birth because she knows there's no sick days. Just because you had a baby a couple of hours ago, you think you can not come out here and pick this cotton? No, I expect you back on the field bright and early 5 a.m. So she knows that her having a baby is not an excuse. She waits a few hours and awakens the other women in the room with a scream. They rush to her aid and prop her up on the bits and pieces of tattered blankets. They make her as comfortable as possible. The night passes straight away and she still is in labor. The head man was now informed that she will not be in the field today. She cannot stand and she cannot work. The day passes and still no baby is born. She is tired and in pain. 3 days will pass and she will still not see her child. So essentially, Anarcha, she was in labor for 3 days. She was in a lot of pain, of course, a great deal of stress and a great deal of fear. After 3 days, her condition is past serious, and the fact that she is unable to perform her duties as an enslaved woman starts to weigh heavy on the master's thoughts. In an effort to protect his human investment, he summons a physician to the aid in the delivery. That physician is going to be Marion Sims. By this point, she is beyond fatigue and laying flaccid on the floor. He enters the room, he is Marion Sims, and uses a tool to excavate the baby that was stubbornly lodged in the woman's vagina. He has had very little experience using his makeshift forceps. Several days after the birth of her child, she is unable to control her bodily functions. Her master finds her condition repugnant and sends her to the same physician to see if there's anything else that he can do to repair his damaged property. Not anything else can you do to repair this sister, help her out, this human, this lady, can you help her out? No, can you repair my property so I can go ahead and get her back out there on that field and she can continue to do the work for me? Scared and ill, she makes her way to the backyard, which they call the hospital. The physician had constructed for the purpose of treating enslaved women with her condition. She noticed several enslaved women bound to beds and laying on the floor as they are emancipated from what looked like a prolonged starvation. So when Anarcha was escorted into their makeshift hospital, there were already multiple other women in there tied to the beds. And she said that, well, in this story, talking about how pretty much they all looked like they were starving. Filled with fear, she contemplates heavily what will be her fate. Were these women being made well? Would she have to go through a similar ordeal? Is there any place she can go or anyone that can save her from what seems like impending doom? She continued forward into what seems like a small death camp. The physician is happy to see her. He is in the process of working on her surgery to repair her condition. He is not interested in her personal condition or helping her to relieve her. Hold on real quick. He is not interested in her personal condition or helping to relieve her from her suffering. He is interested in the similarities between her and the woman that he hopes to treat one day. He tells her to prop herself up on a table, and that is covered with white cloth. He quickly forces her to spread her legs so that he can examine her damaged vagina. She is unable to say anything as he pokes and prods her most private areas. She lies there in that backyard hospital and waits while he completes his initial examination. He is pleased to find that this woman has several vesicle vaginal fistulas that he would love to operate on. He calls over his other fellow physicians to examine the woman, and they are equally excited to perform a surgical repair that has not yet been perfected. So vesicle vaginal fistulas was something that was pretty common at that time. Essentially, what we're talking about is a fistula. We're talking about an opening between the actual urinary bladder and the actual vaginal canal, and that was thought to be caused because of the way the actual birth was being performed with the actual speculum. And so that fistula would allow the urine to actually go through the actual vaginal canal. And it was something that was uncontrollable. Their bladder, it would be constantly, coming through the actual vaginal canal. And so this guy, J. Marion Sims, his whole thing was, how can I perfect this surgery, fix this surgery, and actually take it back to my community and be a hero? How can I figure this out? And so what he was going to do, well, what he did was actually purchase, I forgot how many slaves, I think it was like at least 17 enslaved women to actually experiment on without any anesthesia. But let me stay on track and keep on reading the story. All right. So later on that day, she is prepped for surgery. She is not giving any anesthesia, and the surgical field is not sterile. They hold her down and incise her vaginal wall. So when you read this book, Harriet Washington talks about how in the beginning of doing these surgeries, because Anarcha had 30 surgeries done to her, 30 done to her. And so he talks about how in the beginning of the surgeries, his other medical colleagues, the other doctors would actually hold her down. But it got to the point where the story reported that they felt like the surgeries were so cruel that the men doctor wouldn't even do it anymore. And so he would try to get the women nurses to actually hold them down. And it got to the point where they would walk out and they couldn't do it anymore. And they got to the point where he would force other enslaved women to assist and hold them down. So they held her down, incised her vaginal wall. Already in a vulnerable position, she is unable to do anything but scream. When the surgical procedure is complete, the physicians use a thread to stitch her closed. After the surgery, the physician administers addictive doses of opioids to control her bowel movement. Now, opioid, like we know now, this guy would purposely get his surgical victims addicted to opioid. This physician would purposely get his surgical victims addicted to opioid, not before the surgery, but after the surgery. And he did that because he wanted to make sure that they weren't feeling pain afterwards, and also so that they could be addicted to coming back to him, but also so that they would be more willing to actually come back. And so he was trying to decrease them associating the pains of a surgery after. That way they can feel like the surgery kind of did some benefit for them. And so they would they'd be more willing to fight. They would fight less to actually come back. But he wouldn't give it to them before. And so they would give the opioids for pain, and they would also give it to control their bowel movements. What does that mean? Anybody who knows anything about opioids, you know that opioids will make you constipated. And so it's not like he was really controlling their bowel movements. He was purposely constipating them because that's what opioids do as well too. So she's lying on the floor, unable to conceive of what just occurred to her. This is a 17-year-old sister, 17 years old. She's a baby. She's a baby. She's a baby. She is to endure weeks of post-operative care with minimal food and a physician-inflicted constipation. She hopes to return to her child and her friends. Weeks will pass and she will endure similar surgery again and again and again. But each time she is in a much more deteriorated state. Weakened from infections that has set into her wounds. Unable to do anything besides bear the horrible circumstances, she will endure the exposure of her genitals to strange men, the pain of surgery without any antiseptics, any anesthesia, and the horrible post-operative care. Finally, the physicians will use silver sutures and report that she has no infection. Out of the several fistulas in her bladder, the physicians were able to heal one after 30 operations. So 30 operations, one was fixed. Her name was Anarcha, and she is often forgotten. While the physician, Dr. Sims, is immortalized with countless statues and memorials in his name. So this guy, J. Marion Sims, was big time. He didn't start getting a little bit of smoke until after this book came out. But even after this book came out, because so many of our people had no idea about the horrors in this book, they weren't getting much pushback from the statues of J. Marion Sims, because J. Marion Sims was statued up. He had statues in Central Park. He had statues in schools. You had schools named after him. This guy was a hero. Then this book came out and people started to read it. And they were like, hold on. I know J. Marion Sims. I have a grant named after him. And so you didn't really start seeing statues being taken down until last year. Last year. If this book didn't come out, these same people who are okay with these documentaries and taking songs off the radio, all right, it is what it is. But these same people who sat by and they allowed these statues to remain in place, they allowed these scholarships and schools and these societies to remain in place, named after these murderers. And they weren't going to do anything until we started to make the connection. And then it was like, oh, yeah. All right, we'll take it down. And many of these statues were not taken down. They were simply relocated. So let's continue. Anarcha is her name. Anarcha. She is often forgotten. While the physician, Dr. Sims, is immortalized with countless statues and memorials in his name, his contributions to medicine are often celebrated, and he is called the father of modern gynecology. That's what they call him. But her story has been lost, and that's why I said we have to give the sister back we have to humanize her again. Call her by her name. She has a name. She had a family. She was a human. So by law, Anarcha was not permitted to read or write. She was unable to document the cruelty that befell her. This was written in hopes that those who read it will remember her story and equate Dr. Sims' success with an unimaginable morbidity. Between 1846 and 1849, he used enslaved women as part of an ongoing experiment in vaginal surgery. It is doubtful that he would have been able to refine the gynecological tools such as the speculum and techniques that he is accredited to have created without the exploitation of poor enslaved women. Dr. Sims was part of a society that did not view an entire population of enslaved Africans as worthy of the most basic human right. Like countless. I'm telling you, you won't believe the names in this book and the people that other people are venerating right in front of our face, but those people hated your guts. Like countless other icons in medical history, the physician is remembered while the people he used are forgotten. That's interesting. Like countless other medical icons, the physician is remembered while the people he used to get to where he's going to go are forgotten. These people have made an unimaginable contribution to medicine. Shouldn't they be remembered as often as Dr. Sims. Yes. Yes. Why am I talking about this story? Am I trying to anger Black people? Am I trying to upset Black people? Am I trying to cause some type of riot? Yeah, I'm trying to cause a revolution. I'm trying to cause a revolt, an insurgence, an uprising. I'm trying to do all those things within us. I don't understand how we can know this history, which I know most of us don't, and allow the same healthcare system. This is the same healthcare system. It's the same U.S. public health services that allowed the Tuskegee experiment to happen for 40 years. We're talking about yesterday, as it pertains to our timeline of history. Yesterday, essentially. How can we be so trusting of the system? They call it iatrophobia, Black iatrophobia. And this means it is the fear of the healer. And I remember this was a conversation in my medical ethics class when I was in school. And I was told that, hey, you're going to be important as pertains to reversing medical or Black iatrophobia, which is the fear of doctors. It's the fear of the quote unquote healers. They said that because they're going to trust you because you look like them. And it's going to be important that you go in that community and you make sure you tell them to go in for your annual and your physical and listen to the doctor and take your medication and all that stuff. But when this guy was telling me why I would be important, he triggered something in me, right? And it was because it was too late. I'd already read this book. And so the way he was framing acrophobia was as if Black people are just these backwards people who don't believe in medicine and the advancements that we have made. They're afraid to come to the doctor. They're afraid to come to the hospital. They're afraid to do anything within the medical system. And that was it. Needless to say, I would have to go to counseling because of my response after he made that comment, because he didn't mention anything about the Tuskegee experiment. He didn't mention anything about Henrietta Lacks. He didn't mention anything about any of these stories in medical apartheid. And so to just act like Black people have a fear of going into the medical system without any reasoning is highly offensive. We have great reason. I remember growing up, I'm from Beaufort, South Carolina, born on a dirt road, country, trees and woods. One thing we did not do is go to the doctors. Everything came from the actual herbs. It came from the garden. It came from the fields. My grandma worked miracles with whatever she had in that field. She worked miracle. I mean, she knew so much about healing and what to do and what herbs and all these things. And so that was really my first exposure to medicine. And we knew, the older generation knew, to stay away from them. Now, they didn't clearly articulate to us why, but it was a common theme. Stay away, stay away, stay away. Now, and so like I said, there's good reason, right? But at the same time, we have to take care of ourselves. Self-care is the theme of the day for all of us. We cannot take in foods that'll make us sick, be lost when it comes to the condition that we're dealing with, and then expect it to just randomly get better while taking in the same foods. Most of these conditions that we're dealing with, we're only dealing with them simply because we're eating the actual foods that are making us sick, which is the standard American diet, which is the actual processed foods. And so by eating foods like that, you're going to become sick. You're going to become sick. You're going to become sick. Show me, bring me somebody who is on a whole food diet and they are actually moving. Bring me somebody who's on a whole food diet and moving, doing exercise, that has high blood pressure, that has type 2 diabetes, that has high cholesterol, that is obese, all these things that we call preventable conditions, chronic conditions, lifestyle conditions. Show me the person who's eating whole foods and suffering from those things. You can't do it. We have to be honest with ourselves. And we know that if we are dealing with those conditions, we are also dealing with the standard American diet as well, too. You can't have one without the other, meaning that it is impossible to become diabetic without the use of processed foods. Why? Because nature doesn't work that way. Yeah, they talk about sugar and they talk about fructose, and we keep on calling sugar the devil. Well, I say we have to be careful with the wordings, because you got to understand how the system works. They'll put things in front of you and make you attack it, and then make you beg them to come up with a solution. And they already knew what the solution was, and they already knew what they want to do. And so the hustle was already baked into the whole entire thing. So it's not that sugar is the devil, it's that processed foods are the devil. What processed foods will do to the body and how the processed foods will make the body respond is going to be the actual problem. You have sugar that's in fruits, you have sugar that's in apple, bananas, fructose, all those things, but they are within a proper ratio that will not make you sick. With that sugar or that fructose that you're going to find in the apple, banana, grape, strawberry, whatever you call it, it comes packed into a community of other nutrients. That community is going to have other vitamins, other minerals. It's also going to have fiber. It's going to have enzymes. It's going to have multiple things within that community that when you take in, every bite you take in, you're taking in a community of nutrients that are actually going to improve your health. Those nutrients will also not allow your glucose and your insulin to skyrocket. However, when we're dealing with processed foods, all that is stripped away. It's just highly refined foods that are going to make your glucose skyrocket up while making your insulin skyrocket up, which is going to be the foundation for all these other conditions. And so it is impossible to develop insulin resistance or type 2 diabetes without the use of processed foods. And you can go and sit in the sugarcane field and chew on sugarcane until your jaw fall out, but you will not become diabetic, because before you become diabetic, your jaw is actually going to fall out. It's not going to happen. That's how nature designed it. Nature designed it just in case we got a little crazy and carried away with food. You got to work to become sick. However, with processed foods, it don't take much work, and it tastes good, so it doesn't take much work. So what I'm saying is that we can't be complacent in doing for ourselves. We can't openly trust a system that has shown you time after time that they don't like you like that. They don't like you like that. We can't openly just accept all this recommendations and advice, even though we're not seeing the actual progression, and think that everything is going to be okay. You are your primary care provider. If you notice anything about me, that's my theme. I'm a self-care activist. You are your primary care provider. You have to have a basic level of your anatomy and physiology. Listen, it's only something that you spend 24 hours in a day, 7 days a week, 365 days out of the year, and you're going to be in it for the rest of your life. So it stands to retain that you probably should know a little bit of something about your body. Because if you don't know anything about your body, then you will have to carry yourself into that system. But if you understand the basics, primarily prevention, stop bringing in the nutritional colonizer, which is the foods. If you're not bringing in the sickness, it becomes very hard to get sick. 2, get back into fasting. Fasting has always been a principle of our African traditions. Right now, I know fasting is kind of the trend and all those things, but listen, we've been on that. We've been on that. And you have to get back to fasting. Fasting is our first line of offense and defense. Next, we have to get back to moving. We have to get back to moving. Stagnation is the harbinger of death. We have to get back to being active. Also, we got to get back out into the sunlight. This book talks about vitamin D deficiency in several cases. This book also attributes the decrease in the size of women's pelvises to being vitamin D deficient. We have to understand that vitamin D deficient affects us very differently than it would affect someone who's Caucasian. And they say that 75 to 80% of this American country is vitamin D deficient. But when it comes to the Black community, we're looking in the high 90 percentile as far as being vitamin D deficient. And vitamin D deficient is something completely different for us. One, vitamin D is not even a vitamin, it's a hormone. And we need that hormone in order to function properly, especially when it comes to our psyche. And so when we are deficient in vitamin D, you're looking at a whole long laundry list of conditions that's going to pop up. All right. So Am I working towards inciting a revolution, revolt, insurgents? Yeah, like I said, inside of you, because all we have to do is change the way we see things, change the way we eat. Matter of fact, Tupac said this: change the way we eat. If you're eating foods that will make you sick, the foods will make you sick. If you're not eating those foods that will make you sick, you will become healthier. Fasting is your strongest weapon as it pertains to actually preventing many of these conditions and reversing many of these conditions. I don't want to be jumping around too many topics, but like I said, my main thing was to bring about the name of Anarcha Westcott, our sister who suffered great terrorism by this guy who is heralded as a hero, J. Marion Sims. So let me go ahead and read these comments over here. What's going on, y'all? So while I'm reading the comments, please make sure y'all go ahead and share this video, like this video, subscribe to the channel. All right. So let me read a couple of comments. You're vitamin D deficient. I must take supplements every day. Yeah. So I would say also make sure you get out into the sunlight. Make sure you get out into the sunlight because the actual supplement of vitamin D does not work the same way as the actual sunlight itself. So make sure you get out into the sunlight for sure. All right. Our melanin feeds from the sun. Yeah. Appreciate it, y'all. Appreciate it. No problem. All means. All right. So if y'all have any questions, go ahead and post them right now inside of the chat box because I'm scrolling back up, and I wanna make sure that I'm serving you all. Any questions? Any questions? So yeah, you know, do your thing, make your documentaries, make your movies and everything like that, but let's not be selective. All right, let's not be selective. We're talking about thousands of women who had these procedures done on them without any consent and any anesthesia. Anesthesia is the pain medication or the injection that will make you not feel the cuts, the incisions, the actual pain. And so we're talking about thousands of women, thousands of Black women who had these procedures done without any consent whatsoever, without any anesthesia whatsoever, on their most precious body parts, their vagina. So yeah, you want to make documentaries? All right, cool. Don't forget about her. You want to start a movement called Me Too? Cool. Her too as well. You know, like, once again, don't let them use the can't we just forget and move on? Don't let them use that because that's warfare. Yeah, and you know, another thing, let's crack a couple things open. So like I said, there's a difference between war and warfare. And we don't understand how there's so many strategies that are being used and that have been used for a long time. And that whole, you know, I don't understand why you're so angry is a strategy. I don't understand why we just can't move on is a strategy. To act like you just don't understand in general, like that's a strategy, because what does that do to you? It makes you frustrated. It makes you very emotional. Well, understand that it is hard to be emotional and logical at the same time. And when you're more over into the emotional aspect, your actions are going to be more impulsive and it's going to be more nearsighted. And so the things you do may not work out best for us in the big picture or in the long term, but it may feel good for the moment right then and there. And so if you understand sociology and psychology, it's about getting people to be irrational, impulsive, and highly emotional over and over and over. How can we stimulate them over and over and over? How can we keep them upset and mad over and over and over? Trust me, every quarter, every 3 months, you're going to see a big story. It always happens. The goal is to get you to focus on them. All right, will you look back at us? Hey, focus on us. What you talking about? Building something, creating something? No. Focus on us. You know, so that's a whole nother conversation. Maybe I will come back on here and do some lectures or some videos on warfare and as far as the war strategies and everything like that. So like I said, if you have any questions, put them in the bottom so I can go through and read them. My sides hurt. I don't know the doctor. And also, I'm sorry. Also, if you would like to contact me, please go on Instagram. You can find me at Health-BAMN, Health by B-A-M-N. That's by any means necessary. My name is Edward Williams. I'm the founder and creator of Health by Any Means Necessary. And so that's how you're able to actually reach me. Like I said, Instagram at Health-BAMN. All right, prescription, synthetic, unnatural, high doses. Yeah. So Indy. Yep, somebody in here named Indy LaRue Deja. Y'all read her comment. Y'all read her comment. You know, I don't recommend soy, but you know, I'm very wary of the high dosages of vitamin D from supplements, the synthetic version. Like I said, make it your business to get out into the actual sun and actually get that vitamin D. What you need comes from Earth. Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. All right. Definitely. Let me know. Yeah, for sure. All right, y'all. So I'm gonna go ahead and wrap this up. Let me see. So Barbara, make sure you go and watch my video called Nutritional Colonizer. Somebody asked something about blood pressure. Make sure you go back and watch the video I did on blood pressure. Where I get the book, someone please. Yeah, so as far as getting the book, it's Medical Apartheid. It's Medical Apartheid by Harriet Washington. Make sure you go ahead and check that out. I don't have any affiliates with it. I wish I did. I pushed the hell out of it. Thanks for providing this. No problem, no problem. Y'all very welcome. How is bone being depleted? How is the bone being depleted? Well, you have to understand that we're constantly using our minerals. A lot of your vitamin D and calcium storage and magnesium storage is actually in the bones. The reason why one of the many reasons why I call the processed foods or the standard American diet colonizers, because when you're looking at colonizers as pertains to a territory, they come in and they rob you of your natural resources, your valuable natural resources. Well, processed foods do the same thing, particularly the refined carbohydrates. Refined carbohydrates have to use high amounts of magnesium and calcium to actually metabolize those foods. And so you have foods that are coming in, they're robbing you of your resources, but they're not providing you of any real value at all. They're providing you with quote unquote calories. And this is why when you eat something such as apple, banana, orange, kale, spinach, or any of those things like that, they are actually bringing in resources. And so they're going to sustain you, but they're also going to bring in vitamin A, K. They're going to bring in potassium, magnesium. They're going to actually bring in their minerals themselves that are actually real. Whereas the best processed foods can do is give you something synthetic, and synthetic is not the same as the real thing. So yeah, that's how they rob you. No problem. Y'all very welcome. Very welcome. I did 2 days last week. All right. Yeah. So let's see. All right. So like I said, if you want to contact me, catch me on Instagram at Health-BAMN. That's Health, B-A-M-N. B-A-M-N stands for By Any Means Necessary. I'm the owner, founder of Health by Any Means Necessary. You can catch us over there. Matter of fact, if you want to know anything about fasting, catch me over there on Instagram. If you want to know anything about blood pressure, diabetes, PCOS. Oh yeah, yesterday I did a video on PCOS. Please, if you know anybody that needs information about PCOS, make sure they go back and watch that video from yesterday. I did my best to try to clear up this whole issue around PCOS, because for those who don't know, PCOS is polycystic ovarian syndrome. We have the incorrect information or understanding about PCOS, and that's not because of you. It's because that's what's given to you. But understand that most women who have PCOS are also insulin resistant. So you may not be diabetic, you may not be diagnosed with prediabetes, but most women, 75 to 90%, are insulin resistant, and therefore insulin resistant is the actual foundation for all these conditions that we're facing as far as the chronic and preventable conditions. So I'll come back on here and do something on the trick bag of diseases. But what took place back in the 70s, I can't remember the exact date, is there used to be a term called Syndrome X. That term got bodied because Syndrome X was essentially talking about the many phases of insulin resistance. And when we're talking about the many phases of insulin resistance, we're talking about conditions that can only come about, it can only survive when there's insulin resistance. This will be something such as high blood pressure, heart disease, high cholesterol, PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome, gynecomastia, obesity. In order for those things to exist, they have to stand on the platform of insulin resistance. And so Syndrome X, back in the 70s, they actually understood that that's what was causing it. And so they said, instead of trying to deal with these many phases, let's just deal with Syndrome X. Let's just deal with insulin resistance. Well, needless to say, that term was bodied. It was put in the trunk, put in the body bag, and now it's nowhere to be found. You might find metabolic syndrome, you might find you might find other things, but they then took those symptoms of insulin resistance and chopped it up and turned those into diseases. And so now we have high blood pressure. You think that your high blood pressure is separate from your diabetes when they're both coming from the same thing, which is insulin resistance. You have PCOS and you have diabetes, or you have high cholesterol, or you have obesity, and you think that the two are different, but they're one and the same. They're just different. They're just expressing themselves as differently as insulin resistance. And so in the video last night, not last night, but yesterday, I went through and I spoke about that. So please make sure you go back and check that video out and really understand what insulin resistance is. All right. All right, y'all. So I'm gonna get ready to sign off. Let me see, what time is it? So I've been on here. All right, cool. Yeah. So I'm gonna get ready to sign off. But yeah, make sure you understand that you should not feel any way about understanding your history and also talking about your history and learning and taking action from your history. The reason why I believe we are complacent when it comes to taking the actions that is required to actually keep us healthy, to actually reverse our conditions, is because we believe that this healthcare system will make you healthy. Healthcare system is in the business of management. It is a disease management system. It's about not too sick and not too well, but right there in the middle. And we're gonna see how long we can ride this out. There goes your healthcare. So I know that when you say reparations, they say free healthcare. That's a trick bag, because free healthcare ain't what you want. Once again, free healthcare was used to infiltrate the community in order to do the Tuskegee experiment. Free healthcare ain't what you want. You need to understand that even back in those times, when we're talking about Anarcha during her time, understand that it was the traditional African healers that were blazing the actual pathway for health. You had these medical doctors who were secretly going to the traditional African healers to learn, how did you cure this? How did you make this tincture? How did you do that? Because those folks still knew. They were simply just reaching back and grabbing what their ancestors left for them. However, many of these conditions, these issues were brand new to the Western medical society. So what I'm saying is that you have what it takes. You don't need to get permission from outsiders to take care of you and your people. You have what it takes. Who's going to teach you how to take care of you? Stop eating the foods, which is the nutritional colonizers. That's the processed foods. Get back into the habit of fasting. Start drinking way more water. Leave the juices and sodas alone. Get out into the sun. Move. Connect with your people. Get back into community. And many of these conditions that we're dealing with won't even exist. All right. So, all right, y'all. I appreciate it. Make sure you subscribe. Like I said, make sure you share this video, subscribe, like this video, send it out. We need to know. Like I said, the reason why we don't take action is because we don't know. We think that it's just an accident. We think it's just, oh, look at all these Dallas clinics. They're really trying to take good care of us. How did you get into those Dallas clinics? What is the journey to getting into a Dallas clinic? What has to happen to the kidneys in order for you to get to the point of needing dialysis? That's the question. Also, the question is, how much is each person on those machines worth per year to the medical system? The lowest estimate you're going to find is $95,000. Cool. Okay. That person's going to have to be on that dialysis machine for 3 to 4 hours a day, 3 to 4 times a week. And trust me, the government's going to pay for it if you can't pay for it. Don't worry. Like, that's the one thing they will make sure they find a way and pay for. On top of that, how much does it take to actually run a dialysis clinic? You've seen these dialysis clinics. They don't look like anything special. And guess what? The actual machines themselves are doing the majority of the work. And so you don't need that much of a staff to actually run a dialysis clinic. And so the overhead for a dialysis clinic is extremely low, whereas the actual revenue that is generated is extremely high. So, like I said, I'll get back on here later and talk about the dialysis clinic. But I got some more things I need to put together before I start going off on that part. All right. So I appreciate y'all. I'm going to go ahead and sign off. Like I said, if you want to contact me, catch me on Instagram. My username is H-BAMN, Health, B-A-M-N. All right. So I'm going to holler at y'all later. I appreciate it. Peace.